I seek the shield that keeps the plant secure. I creep unseen within the silent wires. My goal is not to steal, but to obscure the fail-safe checks that stop the deadly fires. I aim to blind the Triton in its place and leave the pipes without their guardian hand. But tripping safeguards gave away my face before the awful ruin I had planned. What three-pronged malware sought to break the site, yet shut the plant down and was brought to light? Welcome back to the CyberSecureOT Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis. Whether you're listening from the plant floor, the Security Operations Center, or just on your morning commute, we have a packed episode today. We are pulling threats out of the abstract and into reality by examining 4 distinct case studies that prove why securing the bridge between the digital and physical worlds is a matter of safety. Here is what we have on deck for today's episode. Segment 1 is the Triton Trisis attack. We are turning back the clock to 2017 to examine the watershed cyber attack on the Petro-Rabbi petrochemical complex in Saudi Arabia. We will break down how adversaries successfully deployed custom malware to compromise the facility's safety instrumented systems, or SIS. Effectively, they were attempting to cut the plant's physical brakes, but instead they just shut it down. And in segment 2, we will put you in the attacker's seat to analyze the May 2026 disruption of Canvas, the learning platform by the extortion group ShinyHunters. By looking at how EdTech has evolved into a form of critical infrastructure, we will explore how vulnerabilities and centralized software as a service dependencies perfectly mirror the third-party risks we face on the OT factory floor. And in segment 4, the Foxconn nitrogen breach, we are shifting to the manufacturing sector to unpack the coordinated nitrogen ransomware strike on Foxconn's North American assembly lines. We will discuss how threat actors specifically target satellite facilities to exploit IT-OT integration lag, and how they weaponize the calendar to hold unreleased data from the clients like Apple, Google, and NVIDIA hostage. Segment 4, we're going to wrap this up with FamousSparrow's energy campaign. We will look at the breaking news regarding China-linked advanced persistent threats known as FamousSparrow, and they are targeting the Azerbaijani oil and gas companies. We will discuss how a simple failure to patch a Microsoft Exchange server allowed attackers multiple points of entry into a critical European energy corridor, and we will trace the historical evolution of IT and OT attacks in the energy sector from 1982 to today, because I think it's helpful and because of everything that's going on in the world today. You cannot outsource your risk, so listen and learn from these events with me, and let's get started. Okay, over my nearly 30 years of working in defense and security, from the Department of Defense to protecting critical maritime and energy infrastructure, I've seen the landscape evolve from theoretical vulnerabilities to kinetic real-world warfare. As I often tell my law students at Texas A&M, we can talk about compliance and risk models all day long, but theory doesn't stop a pipeline from shutting down, and policies don't prevent a turbine from tearing itself apart. That's exactly why I include narrative cybersecurity stories in this podcast. In the IT world, a breach usually means a loss of data. You can think credit card numbers, emails, and intellectual property. It's bad, but it's digital. In the operational technology world, a breach means physical impact. It means pumps failing, pressure building, and people getting hurt. By walking through these attacks step by step, we pull the threat out of the abstract and into reality. We learn how the adversaries think, where our defenses fail, and why building a cost-effective, operational, reliable, and efficient security program is a matter of safety. But today, we're going to go back in time to look at a watershed moment in OT security, a moment where the adversary didn't just want to disrupt operations, they wanted to cause a catastrophe. I bring this up as a prelude to segment 4 in this episode, an attack on the European energy sector. When threats are probing external services like Microsoft Exchange in this case, it's a signal of what is to come. So let's dive right into this. Think about it. The year is 2017. Almost 10 years ago, the target, the Petro-Rabbi petrochemical complex in Saudi Arabia. The incident is a landmark cyber attack known as Triton. Though you might also hear it referred to as Trisis or Hat Man. So to understand the sheer audacity of Triton, you have to understand what is targeted. This remains one of the most significant industrial cyber attacks in history, because it was the first malware designed specifically to compromise safety instrumented systems, or what we call SIS. Think of SIS as a physical brake for the plant. It slows things down or brings them safely to a halt. While earlier industrial attacks like Stuxnet, for example, focused on disrupting a process, Triton was focused entirely on disabling those safety brakes, potentially allowing for catastrophic physical failure, massive explosions, or a devastating loss of life. The attackers, later attributed by the U.S. Treasury to the Russian TSNIIKHM Institute, were patient. They lurked inside the Petro-Rabbi network for over a year before deploying their ultimate weapon. And here's the thing. They were remotely connected to that network in the distributed control system, lurking, waiting. Like so many OT breaches, it didn't start on the plant floor though, and that's why it's important. The threat actors gained their initial access into the corporate IT network, likely through a simple spear phishing email, before moving laterally into the operational technology environment through a misconfigured firewall. From there, they found their gold mine. They compromised the TriStation 1311 engineering workstation. This workstation is critical. It's a node in the network. It possesses the rights required to reprogram a facility's safety logic. It's the software behind the safety instrumented system. But a compromised workstation isn't enough. It's not enough on its own. The Triconix controllers used at the facility feature a physical key switch with 4 distinct positions. Those positions are run, program, remote, and stop. Program and remote are kind of similar. The attack ultimately succeeded because these keys on the plant floor were left in either program or remote mode, effectively bypassing a physical safeguard and allowing the malicious software to overwrite the controller's logic. And they did that over the network. Once they had the opening, the attackers deployed Triton, an attack framework custom designed to communicate directly with Schneider Electric's Triconix safety controllers. The malware was a masterpiece of malicious engineering, operating on 3 primary layers. So this was a custom payload. First, there was a scripting layer written in Python. This compiled framework named trilog.exe, it kind of sounds legit, cleverly mimicked a legitimate Schneider log collection utility. This layer contained the core logic needed to interact with the target hardware or the actual safety controller. Second, the communication layer. The attackers had successfully reverse engineered the proprietary undocumented TriStation protocol. It operated on UDP 1502. By doing this, the malware was able to talk to the controllers as if it were perfectly legitimate engineering workstation software. And then finally, there was a firmware implant. Once the malware gained access, it exploited a 0-day vulnerability found in the Triconix firmware. Specifically, it happened in versions 10.0 and 10.4, so if you've got that, you need to update it. It injected 2 distinct stages of PowerPC shellcode directly into the controller's memory, establishing a persistent remote access Trojan. We know those as rats. So if you see cyber malware called a rat, it's a remote access Trojan. It's made so you can remotely access things. With this in-memory RAT active, the attackers had God mode access on that system. They could query the actual state of the safety system. Most terrifyingly, they could modify the safety logic to prevent the system from initiating a trip, even if the plant entered a highly dangerous volatile state. And that's what they tried to do. So they had successfully cut the brake lines. So why didn't Petro Rabbi go up in flames? Because it didn't. Why wasn't this large industrial disaster the disaster of the decade? Well, because of a single coding error. The attackers made a simple mistake in their malware. In both June and August of 2017, this error caused several of the Tritonix controllers to unexpectedly enter a fail-safe state, forcing the hardware to reboot. This hardware reboot functioned exactly as it was supposed to and triggered an automatic shutdown of the plant. Plant operators initially dismissed it. They thought the first event was a routine mechanical failure, but when the second event happened, they realized they needed to deeply investigate what was going on. So they went through like an exhaustive forensic investigation, and they even included Schneider Electric and Mandiant at the time. That investigation eventually unearthed that trilog.exe file hidden in the network. The Triton incident fundamentally changed how we protect critical infrastructure today. It taught us hard, undeniable lessons. We learned that safety systems must be both logically and physically isolated from the distributed control system. We were reminded that physical security matters. Those physical key switches are a vital last line of defense, and they should absolutely never be left in program. Finally, it proved that using undocumented protocols like Tristation does not provide security through obscurity. It simply makes detecting an anomaly that much harder unless you are utilizing deep packet inspection. So Triton was a wake-up call. The adversaries aren't just scanning our networks anymore, they are learning our engineering. We have to build defense in depth, and we have to secure the physical bridge to the digital world. So stick around. We aren't done yet. We're just getting started. After the break, we're going to shift gears. In segment 2, we'll be breaking down the Canvas cyber attack, exploring how threat actors continue to evolve their tactics, and what you need to do to keep your facility off the evening news. And we're back. Now for my second segment of the day, we are going to step slightly outside of the factory floor to look at a massive hit that just shook the foundation of a different kind of critical infrastructure. We're talking about the May 2026 Canvas Learning Platform cyber attack. If you're a university student or you have kids in college, your life was probably just turned upside down during the finals week. Now, typically on the show, we talk about OT, operational technology, manufacturing lines, power grids, water treatment facilities, things like that. But let me tell you something about EdTech. This has become a critical infrastructure for the academic world, and it's a big business. When instructures, Canvas goes down, it's not just a website failing, it's the operational halting of over 9,000 schools globally. It's the pipeline shutting off. And I'm familiar with this platform. I use this platform when I teach, so it's a big deal. To really understand this breach and to tie it back to our world, I want to step away from the corporate press releases for just a moment. I want to pull from my own years of experience staring down the barrel of these incidents, and I want to put you in the attacker's seat. And this is what I try to do every time in this episode. So we're going to look at this from a second-person gray hat perspective. We're going to make some definite assumptions about why ShinyHunters, the group responsible for this mess, they keep popping up in the news, did exactly what they did. So put your hood up and crack your knuckles. You're sitting in the dark glow of your monitors. You're a highly skilled gray hat who's decided to cross the line for a massive payday. You're hunting a target. And why Canvas? You don't want to hack a single university. That's a small cash out. That's small change. You want the whole pie. You look at infrastructure, or you look at Instructure, the parent company. you see that Canvas is the centralized nervous system for roughly 75 million users. You know that universities are notorious for decentralized, messy IT environments, but they all funnel back into this one software as a service platform. It's the ultimate supply chain vulnerability, and you assume, rightly, that because Canvas integrates with countless third-party apps, legacy university databases, and external plugins, their attack surface must be massive. There is an edge case they missed. You find a crack, maybe an exposed API, maybe compromised credentials from an integration vendor. You don't need a sophisticated zero-day exploit when the front door is left unlocked by sloppy network architecture. And now it's late April, April 25th. You're in. You don't smash and grab right away. You're a professional. You sit quietly in the system. You start siphoning data. You pull over these, 3 terabytes of data. You're looking at names, email addresses, student IDs, course histories, and private messages across thousands of institutions. Sure, maybe you don't crack the heavily encrypted passwords or get access to the financial data, but you don't need them. You know that personally identifiable information, PII, mixed with specific contextual data, is the golden goose for launching devastating, highly targeted phishing campaigns down the line. So, by May 1st, Instructure realizes you're there. They spot the intrusion, they revoke the access, and they post a vague cybersecurity incident update on their status page. They think they've contained you. But you've already got the goods. So, on May 3rd, you send the ransom letter. You give them a deadline, May 6th, pay up, or the data gets leaked to the dark web. Here's where you get insulted. You're sitting there waiting for the negotiation to start, and Instructure plays hardball. They don't respond to your demands publicly. Instead, they try to quietly patch their systems. From your perspective, this is a sign of disrespect. You're a top-tier extortion gang. You breached Vimeo, you hit Crunchbase, and now you hold the academic records of the Western Hemisphere. You realize they aren't taking the threat seriously enough. So you make a definite assumption. The only way to force a massive corporation to pay is to hit their bottom line. And for a cloud service, their bottom line is uptime. You decide to weaponize time itself. You look at the calendar. It's early May. What happens in early May? Finals week. You escalate. You pivot from simple data extortion to operational disruption. You use lingering access or secondary backdoors you planted, and you deface the Canvas login pages of roughly 330 institutions. You don't just take it down, you leave your mark. You tell them you ignored us and did some security patches. Now you pay the price. And then on May 8th, you pull the plug entirely. Canvas goes offline midday. Imagine the chaos you're watching unfold from your terminal. You see the headlines roll in from AP News, CBS, NBC, The Crimson, Harvard, Columbia, Georgetown, Penn State. They are all scrambling. Examinations are canceled. Deadlines are arbitrarily extended. The entire operational technology of these universities is paralyzed. You've created an artificial, natural disaster. You extend the deadlines to May 12th because you now know the pressure cooker is about to burst. The university's C-suites are screaming at Instructure's CEO. The House Homeland Security Committee is demanding federal briefings. You've successfully elevated this from a quiet data breach to a national incident. You know Instructure has no choice now. They can't restore confidence while you're holding the threat of a data leak over their heads during the most critical academic week of the year. And you were right. They cave. By the time May 12th rolls around, the news hits. Instructure reached an agreement with you. They proudly announced to the world that the data has returned and they received digital confirmation of data destruction. They call them shred logs. You're sitting at your desk reading that press release and you smirk. As someone who operates in this space, you know what shred logs are. They're a polite fiction. They're a digital receipt you hand over so the corporate executives can tell their board and their angry customers that everything is fine. Did you actually delete the 3 terabytes of data? Maybe. In the ransomware game, trust is a commodity, and maybe you want to protect your reputation as a reliable extortionist. But the point is, you forced their hand. You prove that centralization without bulletproof security is a house of cards. So, all right, let's step back out of this persona and let's say we're ourselves again. Why did I walk you through that scenario in this segment? Because in the OT world, we suffer from that exact same vulnerability. Whether it's a learning management system like Canvas or an industrial control system managing a water treatment facility, the adversary's logic is identical. ShinyHunters didn't attack Canvas because they care about college sociology finals. They attacked Canvas because they identified a critical operational dependency. They knew that taking down the single platform would cause a cascading catastrophic failure across thousands of downstream clients. When we look at the industrial environments we protect, we have to ask ourselves, what is our Canvas? What is that one vendor, that one cloud-connected management platform that if it goes dark, halts our entire production line? The Canvas breach is a class in leverage. The attackers knew the calendar finals week. They knew the architecture, a centralized cloud platform. And they knew the corporate psychology that eventually the immense pressure from 9,000 angry institutional clients would outweigh the FBI's standing advice not to negotiate with cybercriminals. Instructure says the system is safe now, fully operational. They bought their peace of mind with whatever undocumented agreement they reached, but for the millions of users whose names, emails, and IDs were exposed, the threat is just beginning. Those details are going to be used to craft highly targeted spear phishing campaigns. Imagine getting an email that looks exactly like it's from your professor, referencing your actual course, asking you to click a link to view your final grade. The secondary attacks are coming. In CyberSecureOT, we preach defense in depth. If universities treated their LMS platforms like critical operational technology, maybe we'd see better contingency planning. Instead, we have a reactive culture. They pushed everything to the cloud for convenience. And when the cloud evaporated, they had zero analog backups. So no paper exams, no local servers, just a bunch of stranded students and stressed out administrators. The lesson here is simple, folks. You cannot outsource your risk. You can outsource your hosting. You can outsource your software development. But when the screens go black and the ransom notes pop up, it's your operation that grinds to a halt. If you're managing OT networks, take a hard look at your third-party dependencies, audit them, ask the tough questions. Don't wait for a group like ShinyHunters to do your penetration testing for you. Now that wraps up segment 2. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at Foxconn, the nitrogen breach in manufacturing. All right, welcome back from our break. If you're just joining us, you're listening to segment 3. We just learned about Canvas, the educational system breach, but now we're pivoting to manufacturing. So we're in critical infrastructure for sure, terra firma. And the reality this week is that a massive blinking red light on the dashboard of the global supply chain is staring at our faces. I'm talking about Foxconn. Over the last few days, a flurry of reports dropped in the news. The Record, Bleeping Computer, and Wired all hit us with this headline. Foxconn confirmed a major cyber attack on their North American factories. TechCrunch and the Register filled in the terrifying gaps from a technical perspective. A ransomware gang known as Nitrogen is claiming responsibility. And they aren't just holding systems hostage. They are claiming to have exfiltrated highly sensitive, unreleased data from Foxconn's biggest clients. Those are Apple, Google, and NVIDIA. Industrial Cyber put it in perspective, linking this to the recent hit on West Pharmaceutical, proving that the manufacturing sector is under a coordinated heavy artillery siege. So now, for anyone listening who might not be deep in the hardware weeds, what is Foxconn? Officially known as Han High Precision Industry, they are the largest electronics contract manufacturer on the planet. If you have a smartphone in your pocket, a graphics card in your rig, or a smart device in your home, there is a very high probability it was assembled on a Foxconn line. That's who they are. They are the silent titans behind Apple's iPhones, NVIDIA's AI powering GPUs, and Google's Pixel hardware. They don't just build tech, they are the physical manifestation of modern day tech economy. So when an entity like Foxconn gets hit, the shockwaves don't just rattle IT, they rattle global stock markets. And as an OT guy, I look at this and I immediately think about the plant floor. I think about the PLCs and the SCADA systems, the robotics on those North American assembly lines suddenly grinding to a halt because an IT breach bled over into the operational tech. So when a Foxconn line goes down, millions of dollars evaporate into the ether every single hour. But how did this happen? And more importantly, why did they hit the specific target in this very specific way? So Wired ran an op-ed saying this attack shows nothing is safe forever. To understand that, I like to put myself in the shoes of the adversary. I like to look at this from a gray hat or an initial access broker's perspective. You can make some very definitive or definite assumptions about why Nitrogen executed this operation in the way that they did. So people read these headlines and they think it's random. They think Nitrogen was just casting a wide fishing net and got lucky. I'm telling you right now, definitely that is completely false. This was a highly targeted, calculated surgical strike. Nitrogen didn't just stumble into Foxconn, the biggest manufacturer ever. They hunted them. I'll give you 3 absolute assumptions about why this happened the way that it did, and believe me, I said these are assumptions, even though I'm saying they're absolute. They're probably very likely. First, why target the North American factories? Foxconn is a Taiwanese company with massive city-sized mega campuses in China and Asia. So those campuses are fortresses, but their North American footprint, well, those are often newer acquisitions or facilities spun up quickly for political and supply chain diversification. So in my nearly 30 years, I keep boasting, going all the way back to securing some shipboard type systems. These were research and development systems for the Navy. I've seen this exact pattern. Satellite facilities almost always suffer from what I call IT-OT integration lag. They don't get the legacy defenses or the massive security budgets of the mothership. Nitrogen knew the North American facilities were the soft underbelly of the pig, or the beast. They knew they could find a perimeter weakness, probably a forgotten VPN, an unpatched edge server perhaps, and pivot laterally straight to the manufacturing floor. Well, at least they thought they could. They plug an IoT sensor into a critical assembly line to track metrics, and suddenly a ransomware operator has a bridge to the robotics network. So, which brings me to my second assumption. The target wasn't just the factory, it was the timing. Nitrogen is holding Apple, Google, and NVIDIA data. So why them? Because look at the calendar. We are in the middle of May 2026. Look at the product cycles. Apple is locking down the final schematics for the September iPhone launch right now. NVIDIA is in the middle of pushing out their next generation AI chip architectures to data centers around the world. And Nitrogen attacked now because the data they stole is at the absolute maximum market value. If Nitrogen leaks the computer animated design files and supply chain manifests for the next iPhone or the next NVIDIA GPU, Counterfeiters will have clones on the market before the real things even launch. The competitors will dissect the R&D. Nitrogen is making a definite bet. Foxconn has to pay the ransom, not just to decrypt their North American servers, but because Apple and NVIDIA will absolutely crucify them if their intellectual property goes public. Nitrogen is leveraging Foxconn's own clients against them. It's a textbook supply chain extortion model. And the third layer is the systemic extortion. They encrypt the systems to stop the factory floor, and that hurts Foxconn directly. They steal the data and threaten to leak it. That hurts Foxconn's clients. But I guarantee you there is market manipulation happening in the background. These cartels are likely shorting the stock of the victim companies before making the breach public. They double dip on the chaos. Big companies, probably big governments, maybe. Big chaos. Reading the industrial cyber piece, they drew a straight line between this Foxconn attack and the recent hit on the West Pharmaceutical Company. West makes packaging and components for injectable drugs. Foxconn makes components for tech, two completely different industries, but the exact same vulnerability. From an operational technology perspective, it's a terrifying trend. Now, manufacturing has spent the last decade rushing into Industry 4.0. They want smart factories. They want real-time data from the plant floor beamed to the cloud so executives can look at dashboards and see efficiency metrics. But in doing so, they punch holes through those air gaps. They connect legacy programmable logic controllers in some cases, which have zero authentication built into them, directly into those sensors into that IT network. Once an attacker has passed the corporate IT firewall, if the network is flat, which it usually is in these satellite factories, they don't even need advanced malware. They can use the factory's own administrative tools, live off the land. They can literally send a stop command to a robotic arm or alter the temperature threshold on a soldering machine and ruin $1 million worth of microchips in an hour. Nitrogen knew this. They likely breached the IT side, did the reconnaissance for weeks, found the bridge to the OT network, and waited until they had full domain dominance. It's a sobering reality check. We build these incredible machines, we design these intricate global supply chains, and yet the entire house of cards can be blown down by an extortion group leveraging basic architectural flaws. This takeaway here is for the defenders listening to this. You cannot rely on your IT team to protect your plant floor. The days of security by obscurity in industrial control systems are dead and buried. If you are running in a manufacturing facility, you have to assume a breach is imminent. You have to segment your networks. This is exactly why I built Core. It's cost-effective, operational, reliable, and efficient. It's only what you're supposed to do or what you need to do, no more, no less. You need zero trust applied sensibly to the factory floor, or you are going to wake up to a ransom note and a very angry phone call from a major client. So, all right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, we're going to be in segment 4, and we're going to pivot to the FamousSparrow's attack on the European energy market. Okay, now it's segment 4 of CyberSecureOT. If you're wondering why I'm a little bit different today, it's because I spent a lot of time on Friday. I left at 7 in the morning, excuse me, in India, and got home a little after 7 at night. So nearly a day's worth of flying in one day, time-wise. And I'm still recovering from that. So bear with me. This last segment will be good. And we're going to dive straight into some breaking news that perfectly illustrates the intersection of geopolitics, poor patch management, and critical infrastructure defense. So, if you've been monitoring the feeds from the Hacker News, Cybersecurity News, HackRead, GB Hackers, and Cyber Press over the last few days, you've seen the alerts lighting up. A China-linked advanced persistent threat group known as FamousSparrow has just been caught running a highly sophisticated multi-wave intrusion campaign against an unnamed Azerbaijani oil and gas company. So, to understand why this matters, you have to look at the board. What does an Azerbaijani energy firm do? They keep the lights on and the gas flowing for a massive chunk of the European Union. So since the expiration of the Russia-Ukraine gas transit agreement back in 2024, and following the severe maritime disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz earlier this year, the South Caucasus has become an absolute critical energy corridor. These companies aren't just businesses, they are the geopolitical linchpins of the European energy security. And FamousSparrow knows it. So I want you to put your gray hat on again and step out of the SOC and sit in the attacker's chair. You are an operator for FamousSparrow. Your objective is long-term espionage and establishing a persistent foothold in the critical energy corridor. So how do you get in? Do you burn a multi-million-dollar custom-built zero-day exploit aimed at their operational technology? Well, no. You scan the perimeter, and what do you find? A Microsoft Exchange server that hasn't been patched. Microsoft Exchange, for those of you who don't know, is the email service that Microsoft sells to companies, and it allows people to have email in their corporate worlds. Now, when those servers get stood up, they're also a direct connection to the public internet because they're used to send messages in and out. So vulnerabilities in that space are bad. You leverage the well-known proxy not shell vulnerability. It's sitting right there, practically unlocked. You break in, you drop a web shell, and you set up your deed rat, also known as SnappyBee, alongside the turn door backdoor. So you've got your malware, you've got your remote access Trojan, and then you set up your backdoor. And to make sure the endpoint detection and response or EDR tools don't scream, you use advanced DLL side loading, meaning it's just going right in from the side. So you hide your malicious payload by piggybacking on a legitimate log main Hamachi binary. I don't know all these technologies. These are just the technologies that were actually compromised in this attack. And this used API hooking to execute your code only when the legitimate program follows its normal sequence. It's a brilliant defense evasion. Just slip right in there without even getting seen. So, but here's the kicker. And this is where the gray hat in you just shakes your head and smiles. The defenders spot your initial malware. They clean it up, but they fail to patch the underlying Exchange vulnerability or fully rotate their compromised credentials. So what do? You don't panic. You just wait a few weeks and walk right back through the exact same hole. So you do this 3 separate times between late December 2025 and late February 2026. Why work harder when your target leaves the keys in the lock? And what's funny is they found it, cleaned it, found it, cleaned it, found it again. To truly grasp how dangerous this IT-centric entry point is, we need to zoom out. So understanding the convergence of IT and OT networks and the boundaries between them is critical when analyzing these historical compromises. So analyzing the historical landscape of cyber events in the oil and gas sector reveals a clear evolution from early sabotage to sophisticated espionage, destructive wipers, and financially motivated ransomware, impacting our IT and OT environments in oil and gas. So let's trace that evolution, shall we? A little history lesson. This will be fun. Back in 1982, there is an alleged event that took place in the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. This was an explosion that some officials, government officials in the U.S. who retired later, released in their memoirs, said was a cyber attack. The technologies impacted were the supervisor control and data acquisition systems, which were brand new at the time because most of the control systems for the Trans-Siberian Pipeline were actually mechanical, but they did have some software. And the pump control software. So they said that a logic bomb was introduced into that supervisor control software, and it was stolen from a Canadian firm by Russians. It was subsequently deployed in the pipeline to alter pump speeds and cause a massive pressure buildup. So fast forward to 2008, in the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, BTC for short, pipeline in Turkey. So this pipeline, the threat actors allegedly accessed the network via vulnerabilities in security camera software, moving laterally into the OT network to manipulate pressure controls while suppressing operational alarms. At first, they thought it wasn't a cyber attack. They said, no, this isn't a cyber attack, until they realized that over 60 hours of logs had been deleted during the event, which proved that somebody was trying to cover the tracks. In 2010, Operation Night Dragon shifted the focus to data theft. And this is where a lot of SCADA and control system network information and credentials and engineering documents, all those types of data were stolen from energy companies. Attackers utilized spear phishing, social engineering, SQL injection, Windows OS exploitation, and credential harvesting designed to extract that intellectual property about supervisor control and control systems for oil and gas. That was exfiltration. Then the gloves came off in 2012. This is when Saudi Aramco and Rasgas were hit. The attack impacted 30,000 Windows-based IT systems. It wasn't in the OT space, but it was corporate email servers and supply chain management systems. So they basically still took them down. While the OT networks remained largely isolated, the collapse of the IT infrastructure forced operations into manual mode. They achieved this using a master boot record wiping tool. So this is a MBR wiping tool on those Windows stations, and it just catastrophically destroyed everything. This was called the Shamoon wiper. So we're tracking this back. Remember, we saw this Exchange attack. What's been happening in the past looks like it might be repeating itself. And then this is going to be why I had my opening story on Triton. In 2017, the Triton attack at Petro Rabbi fundamentally changed our threat models because they were actually in the control system. The attackers targeted the SIS, specifically Schneider Electric's Triconix controllers, and the engineering workstation for those controllers. The attackers compromised the engineering workstation to deploy a payload that reprogrammed the SIS logic, or the safety system logic. They were actively attempting to shut down that safety system and cause a catastrophic failure. And they almost did it. They were actually in the system. But today we're navigating the fallout of IT vulnerabilities bridging into physical disruption. So look at the 2021 Colonial Pipeline attack. The OT pipeline network was preemptively shut down because the operator was worried about something that might traverse to the OT network from the IT network in that IT-OT gap. The attackers gained access through an exploitation of legacy internet-facing VPN profile, lacking sufficient multi-factor authentication. It didn't have any password spraying or pre-encryption, so they just exfiltrated the data. So this was where we saw one of the first or largest ransomware as a service organizations actually use data exfiltration, not just encryption. So they use that double extortion attack. And just 2 years ago, just a couple of years ago, in 2024, Halliburton experienced a major breach involving a IT network intrusion, unauthorized data access and lateral movement, leading to a disruption of remote operations and connectivity via a ransom hub. So what does this timeline and the latest FamousSparrow attack teach us? It demands that we implement something like a cost-effective, operational, and reliable approach to our security architecture. If FamousSparrow can repeatedly breach a major geopolitical energy supplier simply because a Microsoft Exchange server wasn't patched ever, we are failing at the operational fundamentals. A reliable security posture means rapid remediation of known vulnerabilities. An efficient security program implements aggressive network segmentation, ensuring that a compromised IT email server does not afford an adversary lateral movement into the OT environment where the physical damage occurs. You have to hunt for the anomalies. If attackers are hiding behind legitimate binaries like log main hamachi, again, not familiar with that, your endpoint detection has to be tuned to look for behavioral deviations, not just known hash signatures. So stop giving these adversaries the path of least resistance. Force them to work for it and catch them when they make noise. And with that, thus concludes our episode. This is episode 19 of 2020. 26. Thank you for joining me in these episodes. Please visit my website, cybersecureot.info. All of the articles used for these segments in this episode are in the notes, just like always. And please remember, stay safe, stay secure, and stay tuned. Join me, subscribe. I will see you next week.